Welcome back, ninja community and persons that have just become ninja enough to view my materials for the very first time. Congratulations on becoming ninja enough to view my materials. Now in this video right here, I'm going to be covering some basic techniques with a tonfa. That is what this right here is. This is a tonfa, also called a side handle baton. As you see, there is no ball bearings in it. Okay, so before I get into going over a few techniques with the tonfa and some of the footwork that a real shinobi would actually use, I will go over my quality statement and disclaimer, mostly out of liability. So bear with me real quick as I run through it. And that, of course, is that the viewer, that you understands my quality statement disclaimer video, additionally agrees that this video right here could be treated as is with ballistic protection, which in short means I don't have a seal on it, therefore I don't guarantee the techniques and or your application of the techniques. And if you're watching this video with the intention of using any of its content in committing a crime, that's additionally a crime. Actually using any of my content in committing a crime is an additional crime. Also, the viewer agrees that this is my intellectual property that I'm allowing others to view. Okay, so with the tonfa, you should already be familiar with some of the ways to hold a tonfa. Holding it like this is holding it like a baton. Holding it like this is typically how a real shinobi is going to be holding a tonfa, at least initially, because some of the best strikes and best techniques usually come from this position, much like how I've demonstrated with the sai. You should probably go check those out. Usually how most people are trying to use some weapons is typically trained to lose at the hands of a real shinobi. So typically a shinobi is going to be holding a tonfa like this, and from beginning, from the very front of it, is drawing the tonfa. Here's a tip. Okay, if you are going to be using the tonfa with your right hand, you should probably wear your tonfa on the right side, as you can easily draw the tonfa into a strike from that position. If you are wearing it on the opposite side of the hand you intend to use with it as your primary hand, you have to cross over from this to this position, and when you come out this way, the strikes you have are fewer. You could go into a back fist that's not very effective, as your wrist would be put in an awkward position and follow through with a strike. But the more effective position is on the side of whichever hand you intend to use with it. So drawing from this position is just a straight out punch. And from this straight out punch, as a tonfa has some movements or techniques that are unique to a tonfa, from this position, a missed strike could work into a wrap shot. This wrap shot is done this way, and it doesn't have ball bearings, but if you have enough skill, you can utilize it in a much more effective manner than if it did have ball bearings. Basically, ball bearings are just lazy, and usually illegal if you're not police force and within certain states. Not a lawyer. Check out my disclaimer. Okay, so this wrap shot, explaining the wrap shot, it would usually come from this position here. The wrap shot is usually followed through from a distraction hit, like if you was to distract your opponent by slapping them in the face. Right, if you slap them in the face first, this wrap shot comes across the side like this. If you notice, this right here is lined up as basically the backbone of the weapon, lined up with my arm. And my arm is done in a pronate position for several reasons. The first reason that is done in a pronate position is if the opponent had ducked in, I would be hitting them in the side of the head with this part as opposed to hitting them with this part. So the movement is ambiguous of whether my opponent is ducking back or moving forward. This wrap shot here, right? And you notice the spine is here, right? When it strikes from this position, it has more power than if it was like this. If it was done from this position here, it would have more give and would basically be a slight love tap. So from this position here, this wrap shot has way more power than just trying to throw it around as if it had ball bearings. even a tonfa with ball bearings will not do the amount of damage that can be done with a fixed handle with a proper amount of skill and technique. So this right here, this wrap shot, if your opponent had blocked your arm and you're in this pronate position, they're striking against bone as opposed to flesh. The block striking the flesh could also accidentally hit a pressure point that a real shinobi knows how to hit, which would cause it to be very difficult for you to keep a hold of your weapon. So that is why it's done in that pronate position, or one of the reasons it's done in that pronate position. As you notice, they would be striking against bone, and that pressure point would be protected. Another reason is that it works into another technique from the wrap shot. If my opponent had blocked the tonfa from this wrap shot, right, so they blocked it, I could utilize this weapon as a fluid weapon from this position. A block could work into a strike against their face. And from that position, I could work into a standing grappling, as this weapon is actually a very effective standing grappling weapon. Okay, so if you've watched the video so far, you should probably hit like hard like a ninja and subscribe to be alerted for when I do videos on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Check out my other videos. I'll keep going. Okay, so there are other positions that you could use to tonfa. This position here is usually used if my opponent has a bladed type weapon. As you notice, I am guarding the wrist. I have something covering my wrist a little bit. From this position, it's usually used as a two-handed weapon. There are some basic strikes that could be done and could be done ambiguously from that position or this position, such as a brim shot to the face, a side swipe, or an elbow swipe, followed through with a powerful attack, powerful swing. If a tonfa is ever held with the top portion across the top, like this right here, if it is ever held in this manner, a real shinobi is going to interpret that as my opponent is either unskilled with it or they're actually trying to kill me. So if that's why it should never be held from that position, right? As there are some highly deadly strikes from this position that I will not cover in this video. Okay, so you could practice techniques to improve joint locking with a tonfa or resisting joint locks with a tonfa. Probably shouldn't have said that, but since I have a decent quality statement disclaimer, we'll just keep going. Okay. Another technique that could be used with a tonfa is a strike from underneath, like an underneath the chin, or it could even attack the groin. From this position, you could drop it and swipe upwards. This usually catches your opponent under the chin or groin, right? So that again looks like this. From there to the side, it looks like this. Now if my opponent had ducked from that position and they came in, I could strike straight down. Again, align the spine of the weapon as it has more power that way. If you strike at an angle, it gives. Such as this position, you could fluidly work into striking them in the face. So, improper technique, like from here, this right here, or even striking downwards like this, is less effective than striking straight down like that. Okay, other techniques that could be used with a tonfa is basically a poke to the chest. Or say I wanted to strike my opponent as they had thrown a punch, striking at the armpit. If my opponent has flagged his movement and has thrown up his elbow, this movement here running below the arm or even above the arm, if it strikes above the arm, it's usually going to be running across the top and hitting the throat. If it runs across the bottom, would typically be hitting in the armpit. When someone takes a punch from one of these to the armpit, they usually don't want to throw a swing with that arm anymore. That's usually, they're probably going to be using the other arm or kicking. So getting into some of the strikes against the lower body. Strikes against the lower body, you could go with the jaw-knee technique, as this right here is more effective in breaking bones using this technique of hitting the jaw. If you miss the jaw, you could come back around and hit the knee. The intention of this weapon used in this manner is to knock someone out at the jaw, possibly dislocate the jaw. Or the strike here is, the intention used in this manner is to dislocate the knee. If you simply wanted to immobilize your opponent, a jaw-knee strike from that position, and if you pivot the body as you strike, it has more power. If you pivoted as you struck the jaw, typically across here, it will typically have enough power behind it just to subdue them, as in knocking them unconscious. If it is used this way, the intention is to dislocate the jaw. That is from a real shinobi perspective. So, used as a baton, the jaw-knee, the knee strike is just to, it could still potentially dislocate the knee, but chances are it's to slow down your opponent, because this is less likely, this position is less likely to dislocate the knee than this position here. Okay, some basic footwork is, if a shinobi is moving, the strike forward or moving forward is your rear leg of, if you're either in a left forward stance or a right forward stance, whatever your rear leg is, and you're moving forward, right? That back leg you should drag. That way, if you get struck or pushed while you are moving forward, you don't fall down. So if you're going forward, is to slide the rear leg across the grass or the gravel or the concrete, whatever you're on. Now, if you're stepping to the side, it's the same principle. It's to keep that stability of a standing structure. If someone is throwing a kick, from whatever position you hit with, if they're throwing a kick and you struck the knee, chances are they're not going to be throwing kicks anymore, as more pressure is on the knee that's on the ground. But if someone throws a high kick, as some of the ninja poetry that I've shown in some of my other videos, you should probably check those out too, like it salutes to the sun and moon, this block here is to catch a high kick. And it's very easy to break the kneecap from that position, or just to put pressure on it and subdue them, depending on what side they threw a kick from, right? Even from this side, even done this way, the movements are ambiguous, as a real shinobi technique is ambiguous with multiple weapons without drastically altering the movement. Maybe slightly modified without drastically modifying the movements. All right, so that's some of the basic footwork of how a real shinobi would move. Is that rear leg, the rear foot, is going to be dragging. The toe is going to be dragging. As once you are pushed or struck, you still have your balance, and you're still typically standing. Another footwork technique is the circle step. The circle step is essentially where you're standing on one toe, the foot that's moving, standing on one toe, and as you step to the side and your heel hits as you pivot. It's done almost simultaneously. So that's an exaggeration of the movement. And you're typically not going to be seeing me stand on my toe. What this does is, if my opponent is coming forward, I am transitioning my center. My upper body is typically going to be using something like the ninja poem of the serpent causes the wave. the serpent causes the wave is this technique here. What this does is my center has changed. So if my opponent were pushing against me, I'm diverting the energy that they have. I'm also more or less stepping out of the way of their attack. And if they're in a right forward stance or left forward stance, and if they're throwing a punch from either the right or the left, as real shinobi techniques are ambiguous with multiple weapons and in multiple situations. Because typically shinobi are fighting in limited vision, this technique is to parry the strike, right? This technique is to parry the strike and to follow up with either distracting them by slapping them in the face or by taking their arm. It's like, say I captured their arm and pushed them to the ground by pivoting the entire body as I twisted, depending on what technique my opponent had used. Some more techniques with this is this part right here could be used to choke, to resist a choke. Now, for some reason, there's this rule. I didn't make the rules, but there's this rule apparently that only one person can choke you at a time. So if you are choking yourself, or you have your hand here covering your throat, it's very difficult for anyone to try to choke you. They would basically have to try to move your hand. There are also pressure points that a real shinobi knows how to hit. Typically this pressure point here will cause someone to move. Now real shinobi are usually desensitized to such pressure points. Most pressure points. That one is very difficult to become desensitized to. Because that pressure point there is usually the pressure point that causes someone to get knocked out when they're hit at the corner, because the jawline puts pressure on that point and causes them to black out. Alright, but this technique could be used to choke someone. This was supposedly originally, as a martial arts weapon, supposedly originally evolved from the crutch, something to help someone walk with. Which is kind of funny because now it can be used to help someone not walk. So, some more techniques with a tonfa. The transitions, one would come from this position, spinning it across the knuckles, right, and catch it. When you get back to that position, you could simply drop, come back over, do kind of a roll here, with this. You're in that position, and you could just keep going with that. So the other position is here and here. Again, that looks like this right here. From here to here to here. And again, across here there are deadly strikes. So, congratulations on being ninja enough to view my materials. Like, comment, subscribe, share, check out my other videos. I'm on YouTube under my artist name or my 10th ninja name, Melel. That's M-E-L-E-O. And I have an Instagram, but I'm not telling you what my Instagram name is. You'll just have to be ninja and go figure that out on your own. You can share my video with people who are ninja, but not with people who ought to be ninja, because they might accidentally learn something. Should I do more with this? There's the feint technique with a tonfa. Now, a feint technique is to simply draw the weapon back to get your opponent to react. The feint technique, as it appears that I have drawn the weapon back, but I have moved my hand closer to my opponent. This feint technique is typically used to get my opponent to react. It could even be done from this position here. This could be a feint, as I might imply that I'm trying to dislocate my opponent's knee. Doing from this position, if I raise my hand up closer, what I'm actually doing is putting my hand closer to my opponent's face. As this position here, coming high, could provoke an attack of opportunity, as my opponent might have a reaction. I could distract them by slapping them in the face. So if you like the video, you should probably hit like, because it doesn't cost you anything. Subscribe, that doesn't cost you anything either, apparently. So until next time, my friends, stay ninja.